The forest was alive that morning with a hush that felt sacred. As if heaven itself leaned close to watch, a beam of golden sunlight broke through the canopy, landing on Emma's trembling hands as she cradled a life she was never meant to hold. A newborn gorilla, abandoned, fragile, gasping for breath. No one could explain how the infant had survived the cold night alone. His mother was gone. The troop had vanished. And yet here he was. Alive. Weak. But alive. Emma's heart skipped a beat, for she knew in that moment she was not merely holding an orphan. She was holding a miracle. His tiny fingers curled around hers with a grip so faint, yet so determined. It felt like the forest itself had chosen her. The wind shifted, whispering through the leaves like a prayer. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. And in that whisper, Emma realized this was no accident. She had been called, chosen to be more than a rescuer. She had been chosen to be a mother. From that instant, nothing in her life, or Kezi's, would ever be the same. The forest had always spoken in whispers, but that morning, its voice rose like a cry from the heart of creation. Emma Richardson stood at the edge of the African wilderness, unaware that destiny was about to press its hand upon her life. The dawn light spilled across the campsite, gold washing over green, yet everything felt wrong. The birds that normally filled the air with chorus had gone silent. The buzzing insects muted, as though nature itself had paused to listen. Then came the sound, a scream, not human, not the call of any predator she had studied. It was raw, breaking, drenched in pain, and it pierced Emma's chest like a blade. At 42, she was no stranger to suffering. 20 years as a conservationist had taught her the cruelty of poachers, the fragility of ecosystems, the harsh price of survival. But this sound carried something deeper, something holy. "What is this?" she whispered, her breath trembling as if her soul already knew. Without hesitation, she packed her bag, first aid kit, radio, water, map, and ran into the forest alone, her boots crushing the dew-heavy leaves. David and Marcus were still asleep, but Emma knew time was slipping away. She ran toward the scream, through shafts of sun and shadow, each step echoing a prayer she didn't yet know she was saying. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. When she reached the towering mahogany, she stopped. Her heart thundered. Behind the tree, the world shifted forever. There, in a clearing bathed in broken sunlight, lay a giant female gorilla. Her dark body sprawled against blood-soaked leaves, her chest unmoving. Emma froze, tears springing instantly to her eyes. She didn't need to look closely to know. Hunters, the air still carried the metallic scent of gunfire, the forest heavy with violation. But then her gaze fell on movement. Small, desperate, heartbreaking. A baby gorilla, barely weeks old, pressed against its mother's cold chest, tiny fingers pulling, shaking, pleading. The infant cried with a sound too human to bear, a cry that split Emma open from within. She knelt slowly, her breath ragged. "Oh, little one," she whispered, her voice breaking. The baby's eyes met hers, glossy black pools brimming with fear and innocence, silently begging for comfort, for warmth, for someone. And in that instant, Emma felt something stir in her that had never stirred before. She had never married, never had children, her life consumed by protecting animals in peril. Yet here, facing this fragile soul, something awoke. Not the conservationist in her, not the scientist, but the mother she had never been. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. Carefully, she removed her jacket and extended it. The baby hesitated, sniffed, then reached out with trembling fingers, brushing against Emma's hand. That single touch shattered every wall Emma had built around her heart. "You're not alone anymore," she promised. And with that vow, whispered like prayer, she lifted the orphan into her arms. Emma named the baby Kessie, meaning born of pain, born of survival. Wrapped in her jacket, the infant nestled close, its cries softening as warmth and safety replaced cold and grief. But Emma knew this was only the beginning. Caring for a baby gorilla wasn't just about cradling it to sleep. It required special milk, constant vigilance, medical expertise, and endless patience. And beyond the jungle, laws and permits loomed, threatening to tear them apart before they had even begun. When Emma returned to camp, David dropped the pan he was holding, his eyes widening. "Emma, what have you done?" he gasped, staring at the tiny life pressed against her chest. "I found her," Emma whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "Her mother's gone. Hunters. I couldn't leave her there." The camp stirred with noise. Marcus calling into the radio, the team gathering around, murmurs of awe and concern rising. Cassie whimpered and clung tighter to Emma, her small fingers digging into the fabric of Emma's shirt. "Stay calm," Emma warned. "She's terrified. Don't crowd her." Dr. Williams, their veterinarian, stepped forward. "Emma, let me examine her." Emma's jaw tightened. "Here, in my arms. I won't let her go." That decision sealed her fate. From that moment, Emma was no longer just a conservationist. She was a mother, Cassie's mother. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. That night, Emma lay awake in her tent, rocking Cassie in her arms. The baby cried often, searching for milk, for comfort, for the familiar rhythm of a heartbeat she would never hear again. Emma fed her carefully with improvised mixtures, every hour, exhaustion digging into her bones. Yet every time Casey calmed, every time those tiny eyes fluttered shut in trust, Emma felt something greater than weariness. She felt peace. On the second night, Casey began recognizing her voice. By the third night, she slept against Emma's chest, lulled by the steady rise and fall, finally safe enough to rest. A week later, the transformation was undeniable. Casey no longer reached for anyone else. She clung only to Emma, her cries rising if separated even for a moment. "She sees you as her mother," Dr. Williams said softly, awe in his tone. Tears filled Emma's eyes. She had never expected to hear that word tied to her name. Mother. Yet here she was, chosen not by blood, but by love, by survival, by something divine. The camp became witness to a miracle. The fragile infant who had once wailed against death now thrived in Emma's arms, her strength returning, her spirit healing, and in Kessie's recovery, Emma found her own rebirth. And the child grew and became strong. He was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was on him. Months passed, and the bond between Emma and Casey grew unbreakable. The baby gorilla learned to laugh, to cling to Emma's shoulders as she moved through the forest, to curl against her at night without fear. Emma learned to love in a way she never thought possible. Fiercely, tenderly, with a devotion deeper than duty. She had stepped into the wilderness expecting only to protect, but she had been transformed into something more. A mother, a vessel of hope. Cassie was no longer just an orphan rescued from tragedy. She was living proof of what happens when humans choose compassion over cruelty, when the boundaries between species dissolve in the face of love. One morning, as the sun rose in a blaze of fire across the African sky, Emma whispered into the golden light, "We survived, little one. We survived." Cassie reached up, touching Emma's face with tiny fingers, and in that gesture, Emma knew her life had found its true meaning. What had begun with grief had ended with rebirth. For Kizzy, for Emma, and for every soul who would one day hear their story. This was not just an animal rescue, not just an emotional true story, not even just a dramatic wildlife rescue. It was the reminder the world needed, that in every bond between human and animal, there lies a miracle strong enough to heal the wounds of the earth. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. And so, with tears in her eyes and joy in her heart, Emma held Casey close, knowing that love had written their ending. An ending not of sorrow, but of hope. The first month was slow, almost painfully so, as every breath of the tiny gorilla reminded Emma of how fragile life could be. She spent nights awake, whispering songs she didn't know she knew, feeding with improvised mixtures, wrapping the little one against her chest so the beat of her heart would replace the silence of the mother it had lost. But with Emma's care and relentless devotion, the baby grew stronger. By the end of the second month, it could perch proudly on her shoulder, its small fingers curling into her hair as they walked together through the forest. "Look, Cassie," Emma would murmur, pointing to the rustling canopy. This is your home. These trees, these sounds, these smells. They are your inheritance." And Cassie listened, wide-eyed, ears twitching, tiny hand sometimes gripping Emma's finger as though to anchor itself in this vast, intimidating world. By the third month, Casey began toddling short distances on its own, its little legs clumsy yet determined. Before scampering back to Emma's embrace, it played. It laughed. Yes, gorillas laughed. Emma discovered with delight. She would tickle Cassie and hear its high-pitched giggles echo through the camp. A sound so pure that even the tired men stopped to smile. For Emma, these were the happiest days. Not just because Cassie was surviving, but because Cassie was living. Every laugh, every clumsy run, every moment of discovery was a miracle born out of grief. For everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. And so Emma danced with Casey through the months, not with steps, but with a rhythm of trust, laughter, and motherly devotion. By the 6th month, however, a new challenge rose like a shadow on the horizon. Cassie was no longer a fragile infant, but a young gorilla, growing fast, stronger every day. Its grip was firmer, its body heavier, its presence more commanding. Yet, its trust remained fixed on only one person, Emma. No matter how gently Marcus offered fruit, no matter how warmly David spoke, no matter how carefully Dr. Williams approached, Cassie rejected them all. It clung tighter to Emma, growled at strangers, turned its face away from outstretched hands. David worried. "Emma, this isn't sustainable. Cassie needs to socialize, not just with us, but eventually with its own kind." Emma nodded outwardly, but inside, she resisted. This baby was her world, her child, her reason for waking each morning. To share it with others felt like betrayal. And yet, she knew the truth David spoke. Slowly, she began introducing Cassie to her team. Marcus extended his hand one morning. Cassie didn't even glance. David tried tossing fruit its way. Cassie darted behind Emma's legs. Dr. Williams crouched low, speaking softly. But Cassie let out a low growl, warning him away. "Is this normal?" Emma asked, worry coloring her voice. Dr. Williams gave a patient smile. "The mother-infant bond is always strong. It will take time." But time only seemed to deepen the attachment. Cassie slept in Emma's tent, sat at her feet during research, shadowed her every step. And while it made work nearly impossible, Emma didn't mind. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. What was science compared to this bond? What was research compared to love? By the 9th month, Cassie had already reached half of Emma's height. Stronger, faster, more agile. The young gorilla climbed trees and swung from branches with newfound confidence. One day, Emma watched as Casey leapt joyously into the canopy, arms stretching for freedom. Yet only minutes later, the gorilla rushed back, searching frantically, its eyes locking on Emma. It tumbled into her arms. Trembling, Emma hugged tightly. "I won't leave, Casey. I'll always be here." She meant it. Every word was a vow, spoken as much to herself as to the little one pressed against her chest. For Emma knew a truth she refused to speak aloud. One day, Casey would have to return to the wild, to live the life nature had written for it. That day would break her. But today was not that day. Today was for laughter, for learning, for trust. And as Casey grew, Emma grew too. Not just as a caretaker, but as a mother. She learned patience, sacrifice, and the strength of unconditional love. Casey learned too about trust, about the strange beauty of humanity, about protection and sharing. Each taught the other what survival truly meant. By the end of the first year, Casey was no longer an infant, but a young gorilla. Yet its devotion to Emma had only deepened. They communicated without words. Emma sensing Casey's moods, Casey anticipating Emma's needs. Have you ever known a bond so complete, so unshakable? Could two beings, divided by species, truly live as one? Emma and Casey proved it daily. In every touch, every glance, every breath. Two are better than one. If either falls down, one can help the other up. But even as they stood unbreakable, life whispered of storms yet to come. The second year came like a tide. Casey was now waist-high, her muscles budding beneath her sleek black coat. In the mornings, Emma would wake to find her tent empty, only to discover Casey perched proudly in the branches, sleeping where the wild cradled her. Yet at dawn, without fail, Casey would leap down and rush to Emma's side, arms wrapping around her with such force that Emma staggered. "Good morning, my beautiful girl." Emma would smile, laughing as Casey buried her face against her. But the embraces grew heavier. Not cuddles, but powerful squeezes from a gorilla now nearly Emma's weight. Their games, once light, turned rough. Emma often found herself knocked down, pinned playfully, laughing even as she gasped for breath. "Slow down, Casey," she warned between giggles. "I'm not as strong as you." But Casey didn't understand. To her, Emma was still her mother, still her anchor, still her world. Dr. Williams grew concerned. "Emma, she's not showing normal development." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" By 2 years, gorillas begin stepping away from their mothers, testing independence. But Casey, she's clinging tighter. Emma knew why. Casey's bond wasn't natural. It wasn't formed with a gorilla. But with her, it was a beautiful miracle. Yes, but also a dangerous one. And deep down, Emma feared what this meant. Children are a heritage from the Lord. Offspring a reward from Him. But what happens when the child is not yours to keep? The third year dawned heavy with questions. Casey had surpassed Emma in size. Her body now powerful, her weight nearly 180 pounds. Yet, mentally, she was still Emma's child. Still dependent. Still unwilling to stray far. One morning, Emma awoke to find Casey waiting outside the tent. But this time something was different. Beside her sat a small pile of fruit, carefully gathered. "What's this, Casey?" Emma asked, eyes widening. Casey pushed the fruit toward her, grunting softly, insistently. For the first time, Casey had brought Emma a gift. For the first time, Casey had shared. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, beautiful," she whispered, stroking her face. "You're growing up." But even as Casey grew, Emma's worry deepened. No matter her intelligence, Casey still showed little interest in others. Little skill in gorilla socialization. What would happen when Emma could no longer protect her? In the 4th year, Dr. Sarah Chun arrived at camp, studying Casey with quiet fascination. "She moves like a gorilla," Sarah said, taking notes. "But she mirrors human behaviors too." Emma's chest tightened. "Is that good or bad?" Sarah hesitated. "Both. Casey is brilliant, but her social growth is stunted. She needs her kind Emma." That night, Sarah spoke the truth Emma dreaded. "You've been a wonderful mother, but it's time. She must meet other gorillas. She must return to them." Emma shook her head, her heart breaking. "She's not ready." Sarah's gaze was steady. "It's not her who's not ready. It's you." And Emma knew it was true. Casey had grown into her world, but Emma's world now revolved around Casey. In the 5th year, the test of their love would come, heavier than anything they had yet faced. There's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. The fear wasn't in Casey, it was in Emma, the fear of letting go. Casey now weighed 265 pounds, no longer the tiny infant Emma had once carried against her chest, but a growing force of nature. A gorilla on the threshold of manhood. His shoulders were broadening, his chest rising like a shield, his movements gaining a raw strength he did not yet understand. Yet within his heart, he was still a child. Still the baby who once clung to Emma's hand in the darkness of the forest. One afternoon, as the golden light of the jungle broke through the canopy and painted both mother and son in warm fire, Casey and Emma played as they always had. Emma laughed, her laughter echoing like a bell. while Casey spun in circles, pounding his chest in joy. But in that play, something changed. His massive arm swung too quickly, too powerfully, and Emma was knocked to the ground. Pain shot through her shoulder. She tried to stand but fell again, clutching her arm. In an instant, Casey's joyous cries turned to panicked growls. He circled her, beating his chest in confusion, his voice trembling with fear. He tried to lift her, but his strength was a storm without balance. His hands clutched too tightly, and Emma cried out in agony. Casey froze. The sound of her pain shattered him. His black eyes widened, and his body retreated like a frightened child who had just broken his mother's heart. That night, the forest was quiet. Casey did not come to Emma's tent. He lay beneath a tree, curled in a ball, refusing to forgive himself. The moon bathed him in silver light, but his world was shadowed by guilt. Even when Emma whispered his name into the night, he would not move. He had hurt the only soul who had ever loved him as her own. And Emma, lying awake with tears glistening, whispered prayers into the silence. The lion may grow strong, but the lamb within must not be lost. For even the greatest of beasts carries the spirit of a child. The next day, Dr. Williams gently examined Emma's arm as the fire crackled in the camp. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone meant to console but also to warn. Emma, this was inevitable. Casey is not aware of his strength. He did not do this on purpose. Emma lowered her gaze, pain not only in her arm but in her heart. I know, she whispered, but that makes it worse. His love carries danger. His embrace can wound me. The doctor sighed. Oh, this is the paradox of love with wild things. The more they grow, the harder it is to hold them close. That night, Emma could not sleep. She stepped outside, the night air heavy with dew and the perfume of wild orchids. She searched the forest until she found Casey under a tree, his great body hunched in sorrow. Casey, she called, her voice breaking. Slowly, he lifted his head. His eyes glistened like mirrors of pain. He could not forgive himself. Emma knelt and stretched out her trembling hand. Come here, she whispered. Casey hesitated, fear locking his limbs. What if he hurt her again? But Emma's voice, soft as the wind, carried the weight of forgiveness. Don't worry. You are my girl. You'll always be my girl. Inch by inch, Casey moved forward. His breath was heavy, his chest rising like a tide of emotion. Finally, his great hand reached hers. He clasped it with impossible gentleness, his fingers trembling as if he were holding the most fragile flower. In that moment, the world held its breath. Emma felt no fear, only love. But inside, she knew this was a warning bell. Casey had grown, but his mind was still that of a child. This was dangerous. And love, if it is truly love, sometimes demands the hardest choices. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. In the 6th year of their bond, Emma made a decision that tore her soul apart. She would enroll Casey in a rehabilitation program, a place 125 miles away where other gorillas lived, where perhaps he might learn the instincts nature had tried to write into his blood. Emma repeated the words in her heart like a prayer. This is for his own good. This is for his own good. But her heart rebelled against her mind. How could she send her child away? The day of separation dawned with a sky painted in crimson sorrow. When Casey saw the transport cage, panic erupted in his chest. He thumped his chest, bellowing, "Emma! Emma!" in his own language of grief. His cries echoed across the forest, so raw, so desperate, that every leaf seemed to tremble. Emma broke. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his massive frame. "Don't worry, my love. I'll come every week. I'll never leave you." But Casey fought. He clung to her, refusing to enter the cage, his hands wrapped around her as though he believed his grip could keep her forever. Dr. Williams stepped forward, voice grave. "Emma, it won't work this way. You must let him go." Tears streamed down Emma's face. Her hands cupped Casey's cheeks. "Be strong, Casey. I'll always be here. Always." That day, as the truck carried him away, Casey looked back, his face pressed to the bars, his eyes wild with confusion. Why was his mother sending him away? Emma stood there, rooted like the oldest tree in the forest, her soul breaking in two. That night, her tent was unbearably silent. No sound of Casey's breath, no rustling of his movements. The silence screamed louder than any roar. Emma cried herself into sleep, whispering, "Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow a nest for herself. But where does my child find rest without me?" Weeks turned into months. Emma called the rehabilitation center every day. "How is Casey?" she asked, her voice a blend of hope and dread. "He's trying to adapt," the experts answered, "but he avoids the other gorillas. He doesn't know how to be one of them." The second week, Emma visited. When Casey saw her, his roar split the air. He clung to the cage bars, shaking them with his massive hands, calling to her with all the desperation of a son abandoned. "Take me, take me," his cries seemed to say. Emma's heart shattered into pieces too many to gather. She pressed her hand to his, whispering, "Kwesai, there are things you must learn here. Please understand." But Casey didn't understand. His only thought was betrayal. To him, his mother had left him. After 3 months, the experts delivered their verdict. Casey cannot adapt to the others. He displays too many human behaviors. He may never return to the wild. We might be too late. Emma's world collapsed. Had her love, her desperate protective love, ruined him? She lay awake that night, tears soaking her pillow. "Have I given him life only to steal his freedom?" she whispered. After 6 months, a final decision was made. Casey would never return to the wild. He would live in a safe reserve, cared for, but forever apart from the jungle he was born to. Emma blamed herself, drowning in guilt. But Dr. Chun placed a hand on her shoulder. "Emma, you saved Casey's life. Without you, he would have died. You gave him love. You gave him a chance." Emma's sobs quieted, though her heart still bled. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for a friend. Emma's white hair glowed softly in the fading light of the forest as she sat beneath the fig tree where, decades ago, she had last whispered goodbye. For 28 years, she had carried the weight of both love and loss, of sacrifice and hope. She had given Casey his freedom, and in return he had given her a gift beyond measure. Proof that love does not die. When that towering silverback had come to her, bowed his great head, and reached out his hand, the very same way he had done as a trembling infant, Emma's heart had broken open. Time, distance, species. None of it had erased what they shared. As the forest swallowed his massive form once again, Emma felt no grief. Instead, a quiet miracle bloomed inside her chest. She had not lost Casey. She had planted him into the wild, and he had grown into strength, into fatherhood, into legacy. She realized then that love is never wasted. It flows forward, passed from one generation to the next, like an eternal river. That night, Emma lay under the stars, listening to the forest sing. Her eyes closed with peace she had never known before. "I was never just a researcher," she whispered into the night. "I was chosen to be a mother." And in the distance, somewhere in the dark, a deep, rumbling call echoed back, as if the forest itself, and perhaps Cassie too, was answering her. Because love, true love, never ends. It only changes shape, and sometimes, even after a lifetime, it comes back to hold your hand once more.